Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. I'm Jim Therese, Associate Director of the Rutgers Center for Employee Ownership. I'm very pleased to introduce our presenter today, Dr. Rick Van Doel, the CEO of Performance Validation Incorporated. Rick is going to discuss how he initiated and led the transformation of performance validation from being a closely held private company to an employee-owned company, creating an employee stock ownership plan, or ESOP. Rick is also the founder and CEO of the Indiana Center for Employee Ownership and is a researcher on employee ownership practices and theories. He holds a PhD in organization leadership from Indiana Wesleyan University, and he was awarded a Louis O. Kelso Fellowship here at Rutgers. Rick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Jim, thanks for that great introduction. So I'd like to lead off the discussion today and talk a little bit about performance validation to kind of ground the discussion. So our company is a 33-year-old company. We were founded in 1988. Today we're 100% S Corp ESOP. We started off as an LLC, and then we went to an S Corp, of course, as part of the transition to becoming an ESOP. So we're a technical services company, and what we do is our core services includes providing technical services to the life science industry. What does that really mean, though? Well, what it means is that we qualify the equipment and the facilities that life science companies use to manufacture products, and we help to validate the manufacturing processes that our clients use to make life-saving drugs and medical devices. So we work with a lot of large manufacturers, we work with some small manufacturers, and over the past year, we've had some significant work associated in assisting our clients in developing COVID vaccines, antibodies, and to be able to help with some of that work. So it's really exciting and rewarding to see those types of activities happening that can really change the world and in our community. We have about 100 employees, and we have offices in Indianapolis, Indiana, Portage, Michigan, Auburn, Washington. And we have resident teams in Illinois, Kansas, and Oregon, and we're a certified small business. So that's about me. Now I'd like to know about you. So we have some polling questions, and they're dispersed throughout the presentation. So this is the first one, just to kind of get a gauge of who's in the audience. And Bethany, if you could launch them. So the first question is really, what industry are you involved with? So there's lots of questions in terms of, well, do ESOPs best fit with some or with other types of industries? Maybe there's only one type. Do I fit in? So it'd be nice to see what type of industry that we're dealing with. And then the second question is how familiar are you with ESOPs? You know, I can spell it. I know it. I am one. So that'll help us a little bit understanding of where we are. And of course, you know, if there are questions that pop up during the presentation, you know, feel free to submit them as Eileen said, and we'll be able to get them responded to. The third question, how is your company organized? To be an ESOP, you need to be an S Corp or a C Corp. A lot of times, though, in the beginning, when you're looking at the start of this transition, most companies could be LLC or not organized at all as a company, and that's just one more step in the transition that you have to be able to make. The next question is, do you have a current exit strategy? Believe it or not, according to the annual survey of entrepreneurs, 31% of respondents had no exit strategy for any employee or for any of the business owners. And that's kind of consistent with other research that's out there as well. It's just something that, you know, we'll get to it when we get to it. And before you know it, it's like, well, I'm ready to retire, and what do I do? And then the last question really is, what is your exit strategy timeline? Is it now or in the future or in the distant future? And again, that'll just kind of help set the strategy as far as where are you at in your journey for an exit strategy. Bethany, do you have any results to share?
We're just about done. I'm going to give everybody just a couple more seconds.
Awesome.
So I'd say maybe like 10 more seconds. I'd say we're at 63%, it says finished. So. Okay, I'm going to publish them right now.
Okay. Okay, so it looks like we've got Professional Scientific Technical Services Group as a majority, which is kind of expected. manufacturing, finance and insurance, healthcare, others, and then no answer. So we'll get to the next slide and we'll share a little bit with that. How familiar? Very, somewhat, not at all, no answer. How's your company? Again, just like I said in the discussion, right? Not organized, LLC, and we've got one S Corp, one C Corp. Do you have a current exit strategy? And again, this is really interesting. Yes is 1 and no is 5. So that sort of sets the stage for why we're here, right? And then exit strategy greater than 5 years and not sure. So that's really good. So I appreciate your time in completing that poll, and that'll help us understand a little bit about what your needs are, where you're headed, and it'll help drive maybe some future webinars. So from the National Center for Employee Ownership, these are the demographics. So ESOPs are in many industry types, and from the polling we had professional technical services, real estate, finance, manufacturing. So you can see that again, there's a lot of ESOPs in a lot of different companies, and while there are more manufacturing, professional, scientific, technical services groups, there are ESOPs in almost every NAI, every North American industry classification code. The corporation types, typically 55% are S Corps, 45% are C. And what's really interesting is that in New York, there's 254 ESOPs with about 157,000 participants. And in New Jersey, there's 95 ESOPs with 126 participants. And this is really important because the ESOP companies are a great resource to draw upon as you're looking at what did you do, how did you do it, what were the pitfalls, what would you do differently. And there's about 350 ESOPs in the New York, New Jersey area, and most ESOPs by nature are open and willing to discuss their journey and be available as a resource for questions. Hey, what did we do? How did we do it? Why did we do it? Would you do anything differently? And I think that's really a good opportunity. And when we did our journey, we pulled from some of our Indiana companies that were ESOPs and just asked them, did a coffee meeting, hey, what did you do? How did you like it? And it worked out quite well, I think. So let's get into some of the discussions of why we wanted to do what we wanted to do. So our situation in 2006 was we're looking at our founder to our first generation of leaders. So in 2006, our founder and his wife held about 97% of the company's equity, and they elected to transition ownership of the company to key employees. One of the reasons, they had 2 boys and neither were interested in running the business. Our founder was a strong proponent of employee ownership, and we had option plans from the beginning of the company, but most staff cashed in the options as soon as they were in the money, and very few retained for ownership. They just didn't see it as a valuable entity when you could transition it directly into cash as it was vested or when it was in the money, and use it, buy a house, buy a car, go on vacation. Tom and Carla felt that key employees needed to have control at least 50% of non-founder ownership for the management team to feel and act as key employee owners. It's really easy to follow along when Tom and Carla had 97% of the company. What they wanted to do, we did, and they were open and asked for participation. But at the end of the day, really, it didn't feel like we were active members. With the key employees in the position of ownership, this provides motivation for improved company performance. And then by transitioning the company to the key employees, the company would remain independent, retain existing company culture, provide an opportunity for significant financial gain of key employees, and be able to reward the employees that really helped the company grow from 5 to 13 to 100 employees. And again, it really gets back to legacy. When I leave, how do I want to leave my company, and in what shape do I want to leave it in? Do I want to sell it to a competitor? Do I want to sell it to a large conglomerate? And all of a sudden, that legacy is gone. And most founders and most senior leaders don't really want that to happen. So what was our solution? So in order to work with Tom and Carla to be able to reduce their equity and to increase the equity of the other owners, we initiated a stock repurchase using company profits to purchase and retire the founder's company stock. So basically, it was like a reverse dilution. So as we retired his stock, everyone else's stock increased. We also initiate partnership opportunity to actively seek and increase the number of PB owners. And that was, we talked to owners in the past as far as being able to become an owner, but it was really a focused discussion between top management as far as who do we think would be a good owner and how do we get them engaged. And this really required a minimal capital investment for the new partner, and We wanted them to have some skin in the game. And the investment could be financed through application of 50% of our profit share payment to help minimize the financial impact to the new partner. So as a company, we return 20% of our profits to our employees, and they were able to allocate at least 50% or up to 50% of their profit share payment. So they had, it still came out of their pocket, but it wasn't, money that they had planned or out of their wage income. We initiated an MBO options plan for where partners were eligible to receive options that would vest after 1 year after award. And the options were at zero cost to the employee, and the company would pay the taxes if it was exercised for ownership. And that was one of the crux matters, to make sure that employees would exercise for ownership as opposed to just exercising it for cash and walking out the door. And when we put this plan in place, we had no one that exercised for cash after we changed the plan. So that part worked out really good, I think. And the results, the repurchase plan was effective, and it reduced our founder equity. The partnership plan and the MBO plan did increase the number of owners, so we went from 3 owners to 17. And overall effects reduced founder equity to 14% from 97%, and increased the key employee ownership to 86%. So it was really effective in what we wanted to do, and being able to diversify employee ownership. But still, it was really limited. It was 17 out of, say, 50, 60 employees. So it wasn't broad-based employee ownership. And that was really the goal that we wanted to be able to do at some point in time. And now we have some additional polling questions. So if Bethany, if you could launch the poll, that'd be awesome. So the first question, do you have an options program today that you use to be able to incentivize your key employees? The second question is, what percent of ownership is in the hands of outside of senior management? It could be all founder equity, or it could be all senior management equity, or it could be broad-based, and you already have a good chunk of ownership that's in the hands of the regular employees. And then lastly, in order to be effective as an owner, one of the things we want to be able to do is to share financial information on company performance. So question H is asked, do you share financial information on company performance with your employees, yes or no?
Rick, we're about 50% answered, so I'll let you know when we've got a few more finished.
Awesome, thanks. I see the poll has ended. Okay. So 13 said no, 4 wasn't sure, or no answer, and 1 yes, or no yes, I'm sorry. What percentage of ownership is outside of top management? 0 to 5% is 6. 16 to 20 is 1. Greater than 20 is 5, and 5 no answer. And then do you share financial information? So that's a good mix. It says it's about 50-50. So that's really good. Thank you for your time in completing that poll. So as I said, we had the results that we wanted to. We increased ownership among the employees. We decreased the founders' ownership. We put wealth in the hands of our new owners. But really, is that the right long-term solution for the company? So as we look from first generation to the next generation of owners, what happens when the next senior partner leaves, and the next and the next? So Tom and Carla were at their stage in life when they're looking to retire. Then it was going to be my turn. Then it was going to be our CFO. Then it was going to be the next division director. And one of the concerns we had was that we would simply have a never-ending drain of cash leaving the company as the next owner leaves, the next owner leaves, the next owner leaves. And we would never be able to really, build wealth within the company because it was always going out the window or out the door as the graphic shows. And that really helped initiate our journey to an ESOP. So as I said before, about 47% of mid-market businesses, 5 to 50 million US dollar business owners, 55 years and older, are interested in selling their businesses within 3 years, but over 90% of those business owners have not initiated any planning purposes. And according to the annual survey of entrepreneurs, 31% of respondents had no exit strategy for any owner. But at PV, we started our planning in 2011 and had a long-term plan to provide information and education for our transition to an employee-owned company. And that's what we'll talk about next. So we look at pre-launch, which was 2011 to 2017, and we really did a staged approach towards education. So in 2011 to 2013, it was really limited to myself as the president, CEO, and our CFO. And in 2011, we attended our first webinar, ESOPs, a savvy way to sell your company to your employees. In 2012, we met with our valuation provider. Even though we were an LLC, we had done valuations pretty much every year because we had option programming. We wanted to make sure that we had an independent assessment of the company so we would be able to adequately price those options and when people wanted to sell their membership shares. But we met with our valuation provider who introduced us to the concept of the ESOP and invited us to attend the ESOP Association meeting in Indianapolis. And again, this was limited to myself and our CFO. In 2013, we discussed the ESOP concept with our board and gained agreement to launch an ESOP by 2020. And the primary reason for waiting was the debt on the books from a partial repurchase of founder equity. So we really wanted that to go away. And then we continued our education at the CEO and CFO level by attending the NCO meetings. And then we took a look at the expanding level a little bit. So in 2014, we added our human resources manager and our vice president to our educational path. And we joined the ESOP Association and the National Center for Employee Ownership. Between the 5 of us, we attended regional, state level, and national conferences to be able to talk with other companies that had made this transition, to meet with service providers, to help educate ourselves, and to better understand this item that we were getting involved with. We held an LLC meeting members to inform the members of the intent to become an ESOP with a target date of 2018. And we met with some of the local providers in Indiana to discuss ESOP Q&A. So we met with Kat Sapper-Miller and Crow Horwath to be able to really pick their brain a little bit in terms of what does all this mean, how does it work. And it's interesting, if you go to an NCO meeting or an ESOP meeting, one of the common refrains that you'll hear is, it's all in the plan. And that is true, it is all in the plan, and the plan contains the statutory requirements, but there's so many things that the company has an option of, well, we want to do something better or more. Obviously, you can't do anything less, but you always have the ability to do things differently, and sometimes those options come with handcuffs that you don't find out about until later. And we'll discuss a few of those in a minute or two. In 2015, we commenced education of all of the LLC members. So these were the 17 owners on ESOPs. And we included webinar replays from the NCEO. We had the minority members start attending the ESOP chapter meetings. Again, it's easy for me to say, hey, this is the best thing ever, and we're going to give you the company, and it's not going to cost you a dime, and it's going to be great. But you always have that suspect of, okay, but why would he do that, and how does that work? But to have the staff go to an ESOP chapter meeting or an NCO meeting and be peer-to-peer with other, rank and file employees, and to get an opportunity to have them listen and talk with other employee owners, that's really valuable. And it really provides an opportunity for them to understand that that it's real, I guess maybe is a better way to say it. The other thing that we did was we did an on-site meeting held to provide internal ESOP training and an opportunity. We brought in an external consultant, Kathy Ivanek, to help us play the employee ownership game with our owners. And again, they were all senior members of the staff, and they were all project leaders, and they were all engaged in the work that we do. But it was really the first time that they had to make decisions in terms of, here's the situation, this is what's happening, do you want to do, and you've got X amount of money to spend, do you want to do this, that, or the other thing? Make a decision, spin the dice or spin the wheel, and see what happens. So it was really interesting to see how that played out, and to have them an opportunity to be in the driver's seat, so to speak, in terms of how does this really work? And it was really valuable. In 2016, all minority members attended at least one ESOP chapter meeting. Senior members attended the Regional Tri-State Conference. We established an ESOP focus group for our LLC members to give them an opportunity to discuss any questions they may have, or the path forward, or some of those variable items that we could have in our plan. My CFO and myself attended the NCO conference in Vegas. We met with Martin Stavas of the Beister Institute, and out of that meeting, shortly afterwards, we selected Beister to be PV's ESOP quarterback and to perform our feasibility study. And then late in 16, early 17, Beister completed the feasibility study, and really that study asks two key questions, or tries to answer two key questions. The first one is, can the company afford the transition to an ESOP? And is an ESOP a good match? So obviously, an ESOP is not a panacea. It's not going to solve the world's woes. If the company is, not profitable, or barely profitable, or not growing, or has issues, converting to an ESOP may not be the right answer. And then the second question is, should the company transition to an ESOP? Is an ESOP a good cultural fit? And again, you could make the transition from an LLC to an S Corp or a C Corp, and then to an ESOP, and not change anything within the company. And the employees will still get equity. It'll still be an ESOP. You'll still have tax advantages. But at the end of the day, you're missing out on a key element of being an ESOP, which is the ability to have 100 brains thinking about how can we do things differently, or better, or faster, or more effective, and to be able to capture those ideas and to be able to improve company performance. And that's the sprinkles on the ESOP ice cream cone that really make a difference and can really transcend you from a linear growth pattern to an exponential growth pattern. So some real key things I want to share here is education. So again, you want to say it often, and you want to use different channels. So we did leader-led training, we did focus groups, we did discussions, we did PowerPoints. We brought in internal and external staff to be able to communicate to our employees. So it wasn't just, Rick as the president telling them this is the best thing ever. We had other consultants and other companies come in and talk to our owners as far as what they did, how they did it, the impact that they saw. So again, it was broad brush. And then peer-to-peer, as I said earlier, I think this is really important. So don't neglect the importance of peer-to-peer discussions, the abilities, and again, in COVID, it's a little challenging because you can't really do the networking or meet people at these, but hopefully in the next 3 or 4 months, that will change. And we'll be able to actually go to in-person meetings, and we'll have the ability to have the communications team or your key employees go off and actually, find another person in an employee-owned company and have the opportunity to have a coffee with them and just talk about what's their experience been, and what did they do, and what did they like, what didn't they like. And I think whatever you do, don't neglect that valuable piece in terms of getting buy-in and getting ownership, because again, it's really easy for the president of the company to say, hey, this is what we're going to do and it's going to be great, but it's a lot better when they hear it from someone peer-to-peer. So we talked a little bit about, we did the training internal. We brought in Kathy to play the employee ownership game. In 2017, we provided training to all employees on ESOPs and employee ownership. So we did this really before we even launched the ESOP. So all of our employees had some basic level of understanding before we launched. And the training resources we used included the NCO and ESOP Association. We did meetings, webinars, internally developed training. We did the NCO webinar replays to be able to help provide that information. Again, in 13, we talked with the board and gained agreement to be able to move forward no later than 2020. And then in 2016, we selected Beister to perform the feasibility study, and the rest is history. So then we get to launch. So in 2017 in Q1, Beister completes the feasibility study. It was reviewed and approved by the board, and it did answer the questions, can we, and we could, and should we, and the answer was, well, yeah. So in 2017 in Q2, we looked at service providers and interviewing them to help guide our transition. And we used the NCEO guide to interview and select our service providers that were going to help us in this transition. And one thing I'll caution is that during the transition time period, you really want to document. So if you have a board discussion on the ESOP, you want to make sure that it's documented well and it's incorporated into the minutes. As you go through service provider selection and interviews, you want to make sure that's documented well, because most ESOPs are going to be audited by DOL within the first 3 to 5 years. And one of the things they're going to look at is, did you do due diligence as you transition from an LLC to an S Corp or a C Corp to an ESOP? And did you protect the interest of the ESOP participants? And if you don't have a good documentation trail, that could be a little bit challenging. We did the company announcement of the intended transition to an ESOP in, it says 2018, but really it was 17. Oh, in 18 we were going to do it, sorry. And then in 2017, in Q3 and Q4, we did our evaluation, we did documents and more documents and more documents, and we did the sale negotiation. So because we had done valuations as an LLC for so long, we opted not to do a seller valuation and only have the trustee do a buyer valuation. We were pretty confident we knew what the approximate price of the company was, and it was just really a question of, you know, getting it down to the dollar value that we were both happy with to be able to move forward. Now, obviously, if the company's never been valued and you have no clue what it's worth, it would probably be worthwhile to do a valuation just so that you're not surprised, because oftentimes what's reality and what's an idea are different. In 2017, we converted the company from an LLC to an S Corp and launched the ESOP. So really, we launched the ESOP before we did the sale. And then in 2018, we did 100% of the sale of company to the trust, and we added one independent director to the board, and that was a requirement by the trustee as part of the transition. Oftentimes in privately held, closely held companies, you know, it's all of the operational managers that are on the board, or maybe it's family members, and adding that independent director to the board provides that outside influence to be able to ask maybe the difficult question or the challenging question that oftentimes in with the operational managers on the board, 90% of the time is on operational issues, 10% is on board issues, as opposed to it really being 90 and 10. So last two questions, and this gets back to the previous slide. Have you ever had a valuation performed to determine the company value? And then point question 10, have you included independent board advisors or board members on the company's board? Thanks, Bethany. In our case, we had moved from a fully internal board. We added a board advisor, and then on the launch of the ESOP, we transitioned our founder off of the board, and we added our independent board advisor as a full board member. And we just recently added our second independent board member this past fall. So we're still internally dominated, but we have two now, and we're looking for our third external board member.
We're just waiting for 2 more responses.
Okay. Okay, so we're pretty evenly split between having evaluation 6 have and 8 haven't. Oh, good deal. 6 of them have either a board advisor or a board member. So that's an even split, pretty much 2, 6, and 7. And then, okay, that's great. We'll move on to the next series of items. So one of the things that we did in order to make sure that we continued our communications and education of our employees is that we set up an ESOP Communications Committee, and we drafted the charter in 2017 before we actually sold the company. The members were self-nominated and selected by senior management in 2018, and the committee was active in January of 18, within 3 weeks of the launch of the company, with monthly meetings and planning for education and activities. I was the executive sponsor of the committee, but there was a chairman that was one of our employees who was really driving the committee. The ESOP Communications Committee attended the Spring ESOP Association meeting, and I wanted to share the feedback, which really gets back to the peer-to-peer item we were talking about earlier, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. But I just wanted to highlight, the bold parts, right? The excitement of being involved in part of an employee-owned company was evident throughout the entire event and by all of its participants. So again, when you think about, we're going to this meeting, we're a brand new ESOP, we're trying to figure out how you spell ESOP, and our staff are being able to go off and talk with, other rank and file employees of either maybe new ESOPs or midterm ESOPs or mature ESOPs, and they're getting this feedback that, oh yeah, this is real and this is valuable and this is how it works in our company. And it really does help in terms of, is that how we want our company to be, and can we use that information to kind of help shape our goals and our ideas? And I thought this was good too, is other attendees were surprised and impressed when we told them we were not an ESOP yet, but we were attending at the conference. They were marked by the fact that PV was starting the ESOP process prior to creating the ESOP rather than after. So again, it's really interesting that we were preemptive in being able to make that happen as opposed to trying to play catch up. And of course, this is an exciting time to be part of the PV family. Well, heck yeah. So some of the unique things that we did along the way. And again, every company their journey is unique, and it may not be at the end of the fiscal year that they transition, but these are some things that we did. So we delayed invoicing in Q3 and Q4 to push the receivables into the next calendar year, when in 2018 we would be 100% S Corp ESOP and not have any tax liability. So we effectively reduced our taxable income in 2017 by moving it into 2018. And by reducing that tax liability, reduced the taxes that we needed to be able to pass through to our employee owners on our K1. And then we also pre-funded the ESOP in 2017 with adequate funds to purchase the minority shareholders. So as I said, we had 17 owners, but a vast majority of them were less than 2%. And we did 100% seller financing. So we didn't have a bank involved in our transaction. And I didn't want to have to address a short-term or long-term seller note for someone for $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. So we pre-funded to the tune of about $500,000 to a qualified retirement plan, which is what the ESOP is in 2017. And this created a tax loss for the company on paper in 2017. And again, because we were an S Corp, all those taxes flew through to the K1 on to the employees or to the shareholders of record, and it really reduced their tax liability. So they got a win on that, which was beneficial. So in January 2018, the company was sold to the ESOP Trust. In 2017, the ESOP Prefunding was used to purchase the minority shareholder equity. And again, these are the things that you can choose to do or choose not to do. So we chose to grandfather prior service for ESOP eligibility and vesting. Thus, 10,292 shares, those were the minority shares we purchased, were allocated to all eligible employees effective the date of the sale, and the equity was in the hands of the employees from day one. So I thought that was really good. And again, it would help them understand that this is part of your company now, and you are a beneficial owner, and ideally you want to be able to connect the dots and show how we can increase the size of that pie so everyone gets a bigger chunk. We did seller financing, as I said, which was used to purchase the equity of the greater than 2% shareholders. And the ESOP Communications Committee initiated a certified employee owner program, a series of 5 webinars with polling questions to be able to recognize employees who have successfully completed our EO training and also completed the polling questions. And then once they complete it, they get a certified EO shirt. We do a celebration, and they're a certified employee owner. So what are our results? So right now, as of December 31st, 20% of the company shares have been allocated to our employee owners. The average fully diluted value of our ESOP based on our most recent valuation and allocation is about $100,000. And the key point in this is that all of which required zero financial contribution for our employees. Now we're 20% allocated. So while I'm fully diluted, it's 100,000. The average balance is more like 20. Stock value has increased substantially since our ESOP launch. And in January 1st, 2021, we executed our first post-ESOP acquisition to expand our current offerings and expand services to the West Coast. So that was really exciting. And for our most recent acquisition, we chose to grandfather prior service and tenure. So on the date of the sale of the company to PB, most of the employees were eligible employee owners, and they'll get their first allocation of stock this coming December. And we're continuing to invest in employee ownership culture, development, and training in terms of using the information from the National Center for Employee Ownership, from the ESOP Association, from virtual and in-person meetings. Because it's a never-ending story in terms of education. And that's the end of my presentation. So,
Awesome.
Are there any questions?
Thanks, Rick. So yes, we are going to open it up to questions. Again, if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will try to answer them. We do have a couple that came in already, so I'm going to read these to you. So the first one was, why did you choose this option?
Part of it was a legacy from our founder. I mean, he had initiated the company, in 1988, when he retired from the Navy after he had a stint at General Physics. And he was really looking at, how do we help create wealth for the employee? He was a strong proponent of employee ownership. He probably would have done an ESOP back in the day, but it just didn't work out at that point in time. And instead, he used an option program, which was effective, but it was effective in creating wealth, but it wasn't necessarily effective in creating ownership. So we were really looking at it. How do we reward the key employees who've helped us grow the company? And how do we help retain them? Because we trade hours for dollars. We're a professional services company. We don't have widgets. We don't have a warehouse full of parts or things we've manufactured. And our assets are really in the knowledge and experience and skills of our employees. And we really want them to stay with us.
Awesome. Okay, and then now that you have 3 years as an ESOP, have you seen any benefits in terms of turnover or productivity?
We're still on the path of that. It would be nice to say that, we've got really great examples of some of these things. Our turnover, it depends, because a lot of times our clients will hire our staff. And a lot of times at the 5 to 6 year point, we take a lot of staff directly out of college, and we teach them the job and make them valuable. And unfortunately, our clients find them very valuable and hire them, or we see that they transition out to other companies. But it still is rewarding, because even if they go to our client, a lot of times they become our best customer. So it's kind of a two-edged sword.
Great. In retrospect, would you have approached this transition any differently, or what would you have done differently?
I think the education part was really good. I think maybe I would have looked for some different venues to be able to broaden the education piece. And the other thing I think I would have done differently is I would have looked at including either the significant others or spouses or partners of our employees into that mix, so that they could hear it directly from either the consultants or from us in terms of the value and the benefit of employee owners. Some of the other CEOs that I've worked with and just discussed this with, they'll have employees who will look to jump ship in a manufacturing world, say for a quarter or 50 cents an hour boost in salary. But then when their wife comes in and says, well, wait, you've got this much money in your ESOP and it's going to grow every year and you're going to leave for a few $1,000s, that doesn't make any sense. So a lot of times that awareness piece, it's easy to jump ship for the wrong reason.
Got it. Here's a good question. If ESOPs are so great, why aren't there any more of them?
I think part of it is education for the business owners. I think they are a little bit of a complex beast. They are expensive, but in reality, if you're going to sell your company, you're going to go through a broker, so you're going to pay 4 to 7% probably for the sale of the company. So I don't think that they're necessarily that much more expensive. There's certainly more regulations involved. But I think if you approach it the right way with, education and understanding, and you do it for the right reasons, then I think that it's valuable.
Great. It looks like one more question is, what if we are an 8A certified company? Can we be an ESOP?
Well, and that's where it's challenging because, to be an 8A, you've got to be 51% in that category. So you could be a partial ESOP, which would still be a value to the employees and to the staff, but you would not be able to be 100% employee ownership because as a 100% employee-owned company, you no longer meet the requirements to be an 8A. So my company was a veteran-owned company before the ESOP, and now because we're 100% S Corp ESOP, we're no longer veteran-owned. So that's a little bit of a drawback, but the benefits of the tax leverage retirement and the tax reductions, it makes up for that.
Great, thank you. So that was our last question. So can you advance one more slide? Do we have the final slide up there? There you go. So this concludes today's webinar. For more information on the New Jersey, New York Center for Employee Ownership, you can visit our website, which is ownership.rutgers.edu. I'd like to say thank you to Rick for presenting today, and thanks to everybody for enjoying us. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. We will have a recording of this that will be sent to everybody, but just wanted to say thanks again to everyone for your time today. Have a great day.